All right, we're going to get straight into it, guys. Power versus capacity. This is a very important part, two parts of conditioning work. So first off, we got to ask, what is conditioning? And very simply, conditioning is your ability to do the things you need to do for the amount of time you need to do them. You need to move, throw punches, kicks, grapple, whatever it is for your sport. You need to be able to do it for the duration of every round with the amount of rest time between rounds for the amount of rounds you have for the fight. Hopefully that's pretty easy, pretty simple, pretty clear. Basically, where I see a lot of athletes mess up is they're training too much, too hard, too often. And immediately when I say that, the first response I get online, right, is like, oh, are you telling us not to work hard? It's like, no, of course not. Hard work is a massively important part of being successful at anything you do. But what you need to understand is that you need to train for the demands of the sport. You need to train to be strong, fast, powerful, explosive for the duration of every round, for the amount of rounds you have, right? This is one of the big shifts we made to my athlete, Vinny. And basically, like, while training less, but just fixing up what he was doing in the training, we had him feeling better than he's ever felt before going the distance in his fights. So the key elements to do that is capacity, which is your ability to go for longer, and power, which is your ability to go harder in the short bursts. Now, power wins you moments, right? If you're in an exchange, you're throwing, they're throwing. If you're able to go harder in that short burst, you're going to win that moment. But capacity wins you the fight. But where athletes go wrong is they don't train both, and you need to train both if you're going to truly be successful. So the other thing, because if you've been following me for a while, you hear me talk a lot about the energy systems. And so with the energy systems, all three of them have capacity and power. Now, I'm not going to go into full detail about everything on this slide because it's a lot. But basically, with every energy system, you can train the ability to go harder for a shorter burst, but you can also train the ability to be able to hold that energy system for a little longer. Now, again, alactic work, it is going to burn out a little bit more by that 10 to 12 second mark, no matter what you do. However, if you can teach yourself to be able to go harder within that 10 to 12 seconds, or you can teach yourself to be able to repeat it faster with less rest in between, right? Lactic and the aerobic, same idea. Now I give intervals like, 2 to 4 minute intervals for the aerobic work, the highest pace you can hold. A 2-to-1 work to rest ratio for 3 to 6 rounds. I give intervals like that and not specific sessions because there's different ways to hit it, right? So you can start with the 2-to-1 work to rest at 2 minutes of work, 1 minute of rest at the highest pace you can maintain. You can start upping that 2 minutes and 30 seconds of work to what would the 2-to-1 work to rest ratio? And then 3 minutes to a minute and a half, 4 minutes to 2 minutes. You can even start working it up to like 1-to-1, so like 2 minutes of work, 2 minutes of rest, things like that, to be able to hold a higher pace with more rest time. Now, the next biggest mistake that I see a lot of athletes make is they're training power wrong. Now, when I did my camp with Chris Curtis, that was a picture of us a few weeks before he fought UFC 297. When I did my camp with Chris Curtis, this was a big thing that he told me about his training. Was a lot of it ended up being like just continuing to push as hard as he possibly could. And what we switched up a lot with him was just, again, focusing more on the rest times, focusing more on training the quality versus just training the quantity, right? So for an athlete like that, he's already in shape, he's already strong, he's already powerful, but it was just teaching his body with every explosive power exercise we did, how much power can we generate, being able to rest more so that every powerful rep was higher quality. So the main key you got to remember here, if you want to be more explosive, you need to rest between your sets so you can actually be explosive, right? By taking the full rest time between these sets, you're reloading your alactic system and you're training it more effectively, right? Because if you drain that alactic system with a hard set of something, and then you don't rest enough, and then you try to do another hard set, you're not really letting the alactic system take over. So you got to drain that alactic system, reset with a good amount of rest time, drain that alactic system again, and that way you're training it to be able to output more and be able to recover faster. Next thing is you're resetting your nervous system. You're less fatigued, so you're able to hit quality reps, which brings me into the last point. It keeps the quality high. You're not just out here trying to do more reps. You're out here trying to build power and build repeatability that you're going to be able to take into your fight. This one is weird. Like, I got to actually finally sit down with Sean Brady. We did a camp together last year. And in his camp, that was one of the other really cool things. This dude obviously is already one of the fittest guys in the UFC, but we worked together for his fight with Gilbert Burns. And a lot of what we did, again, just came down to tweaking the system a little bit, with the conditioning work. Just came down to planning out the energy systems more. He already knew how to work hard. He was already in good shape. He could already go 5 rounds, but we just tweaked up a little bit, gave him more of a structure with the energy system work he was doing. And he had one of the best fights of his career. Now, an example for you guys to understand with the power stuff. If you're late in a fight, you throw a hard combination, all the shots get blocked. If you try to repeat it and it starts getting slower, what that tells me immediately, you train capacity, but you probably don't train power very effectively, right? But when you properly train your power, what happens? You throw that same hard combination, every shot gets blocked, but because your nervous system is fresher, because your body's used to that same powerful output every time you throw it, your alactic system recovers faster. You can throw that same hard combination and it looks just as good, just as fast, just as sharp as the ones you're throwing previously. And that's going to show that you have a good capacity and you have good power. So in practice, how do we actually apply this? In the off season or in the early prep for your fights, 12 to 8 weeks out, aerobic power and capacity is the number one focus in your programs. So aerobic power is going to be higher. We're going to talk about that in a second, but this is going to be 2 sessions out of your week, aerobic power or aerobic capacity, potentially one of each, potentially 2 of whichever one you feel like you need the most work on. And then the second one is going to be a capacity session for one of the other 2 energy systems, wherever you feel you need more work. If the explosive power is more of your trouble, go with an alactic session. If the muscle endurance or the ability to, go harder for longer without the muscles burning out is more of a trouble, then go with a lactic session. Now, the aerobic power is going to be a higher focus in the off season than aerobic capacity. This is something that I've been doing a lot with my athletes that we've seen really good success with. Basically, number one, you have a better carryover on time. You don't have to spend 30 minutes going at a steady pace to do your conditioning work. Number 2, a lot of athletes are getting a lot of capacity work in already anyways. They're doing team conditioning sessions that don't really have much structure and go for way too long, which primarily will hit aerobic capacity. Or they're going on long runs themselves already once to twice a week. So us doing that in our strength and conditioning sessions too is kind of just hitting the same drum and then missing this area that they're not working on. And then finally, there's a better transfer to the fight. You're still hitting the aerobic system, still working on the recovery between rounds as capacity does, but you're doing it at a higher pace, which is going to translate more effectively to what you need while you're in there. Working on aerobic power and doing these properly structured conditioning sessions was one of the things that we did with John that you see here. And after an 18-month layoff, he was able to fight the first 5-minute round fight of his career, win by decision dominantly. He won 50-45 basically across all scorecards. I think one judge had it 49-46. And that was after an 18-month layoff and never having fought 5 rounds before. So an example week of this, and you're going to go back in the presentation to this page so you can see what I mean when I say power or capacity for each type of workout when I give you the example weeks. But an example week of this is in your off season, you can go day 1, aerobic power session, day 2, alactic capacity session, day 3, aerobic power session, 3 days of conditioning on top of your skill work. If you want, you can add a recovery run, 20 to 30 minutes, something like that on your rest day. Low pace, just getting the body feeling good. As you get into training camp, you're going to shift more to a lactic system focus. This is 8 to 4 weeks out, earlier part of the camp. Lactic power, aerobic power, lactic capacity. And then number 3, when you get into the closest point, the last 4 weeks, last 3 weeks of hard training, you're going to shift more to the alactic system. That's just that full out power and ability to repeat it. But to make sure that we're touching all bases, one day is going to be alactic power, one day is going to be alactic capacity. And then the day 2, again, you can switch it up based off of what you feel you need the most, would either likely be a lactic capacity or an aerobic power session there as well. So Guys, I hope you found this very useful. I hope you got a lot of good stuff out of this. This made you think a little bit differently about the conditioning you're doing. If you did find this useful, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're putting out a lot more videos like this, and make sure you check out the application in the description of this video. This is our coaching application. So if you're interested in learning more about how we can help you for your next fight and beyond, fill it out, and then we will reach out to have a conversation about what those next steps look like. So hope you all found this extremely useful. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.